implement Debounce functions, which is a very popular interview questions. So Debounce function basically means you want to create wrapper functions such that for the forever function that you pass in to these wrapper functions, only the last trigger within certain intervals or certain delays will be actually executed. So for example, if what you pass in is simply a click functions, like click triggers, and you have set a delay equal to 1000 milliseconds, and then you triggered it, you have this trigger at 200 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, 1000 milliseconds, and 1200 milliseconds. So what will be actually being triggered is only two, which is the last two triggers, because for all the triggers at 200 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, they will be override by the triggers at 1000 milliseconds. And the first trigger will be at 1000 milliseconds, and the second trigger will be at 1200 milliseconds, because there's no any more triggers behind after 1200 milliseconds, so to override the previous triggers. So these will be the only two triggers that actually being executed. So no matter how many times you click within this 1000 milliseconds, only the last time will be counted. Yeah. So this is a simple Debounce explanations. So let's write this code. Since we say this wrapper functions, so we are going to return functions. Let's call these functions. Let's take in arguments, because we don't know that what kind of arguments has been passing, how many numbers, or is there any arguments in passing. So we use a simple these constructions expressions here. Yeah, so we use a timer. We create a timer to record the state of triggers. And if timer equal now, or if timer is not now, it means there are some triggers within the delay. We want to cancel those triggers. How should we do it? Simply say timer dot clear timeout timer. Yeah, so the question is, what is exactly a timer? So a timer is simply we call timer ID that we gotten from the set timeout functions, right? We know set timer functions taking two arguments. The first one is the function that you're going to trigger, which is simply functions. Second argument in passing is a delay. So what's being triggered after the delay? Simply the functions with the arguments being passing. Yeah, so we execute the functions after the delay. Yeah, that's all for these implementations. So let's test it. Since JavaScript doesn't have a function called something like sleep or in Python, so we need to implement some similar functions which I have written previously. So yeah, so we use a delay to simulate the sleep conditions, like sleep for 20 milliseconds, sleep for 400 milliseconds, and sleep for 600 milliseconds. And we also want to use the debounce functions. So let's create a function that we want to be triggered. We can create something like a click equal to the functions, which takes in click ID and console log. Clean is being triggered with ID equal to click ID here. And then we want to get the debounce click functions using our debounce wrapper. Pretty simple. Click debounce equal to debounce click, and let's set a delay of 1000. So let's execute the click here by passing ID of 1. So this is the first click, we know. And this is the second click here. This is the third click here. And this is the fourth click here. So we have triggered the function 4th time. And what is expected to be actually being triggered, like this, what's been output, like how many console logs been output, and what is the exact output of it. According to our previous definitions, only the last trigger, only this will be actually triggered, or only the click function in this line will be actually triggered, or will actually be triggered. So let's test it. Node so debounce.js da 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not really, not exactly what we expected. Why is it happening? We found the error because we are actually putting our timer within the functions instead of outside the functions. So every time the timer is being override into a null conditions, which means every time we didn't really turn into these conditions. Yeah, let's do this again. Yeah, so as you can see right now, only the last trigger is being executed. All the click that we've been triggered previously are simply ignored by this line clear timeout. Yeah, so that's all for this session.